Alright, people. Big fight this coming Sunday. Happening on a Sunday as opposed to a Saturday. It's obviously Easter Sunday in Ireland and the UK. It's a bank holiday Monday, of course. So Sky Sports and Boxer are doing this show on a Sunday night in the O2 in Greenwich in London. I'm looking forward to it. Fabio Wardley versus Frazer Clarke. I had hoped to get this video out a lot earlier in the day. I had to go up to Newry to get a UK SIM, which is now in this. So I've got a UK phone number now, as well as the normal one that I always use. Boy, that was a experience. Getting up there was fine. Went to visit my friend on the way home who lives near Newry, and I might have made a mistake with the postcode. I might have put a digit wrong. Long story short, it took me on some roads that were kind of out the way, as you'll see on screen. Lovely, beautiful views, beautiful sights, but those roads definitely weren't made for a BMW in mind. It was a rough drive, I will say that. But no need to go on about that. In terms of the fight, let's talk about this. Just before we talk about the fight, let's talk about the fight card in of itself. Ben Whittaker, Leon Willings, I think is how you say that guy's name. 7-1, 23 years old. Who was his one loss to? Robbie Chapman. Oh boy, that doesn't look good. 8-19 was his record. Beat Jack Barton back to back. I don't like it when a fighter fights the same opponent back to back, especially when it's, you know, they're not a well-known fighter, if that makes, you know what I mean? Like, I say not well-known, but if it's a kind of a losing, this is like I have a journeyman record, but, you know, he's no great shakes, judging by the look of his records. I don't really like that, but that's who Whittaker's in there with. Vidal Riley versus Michaela Wall, Callum Simpson. Marku versus Congo is a good fight. I believe that'll be the co-main, and I'd say that a lot of the tickets will have been sold by Marku because he has a massive fan base in his native Albania. They're in London. They come to London. I mean, Marku was a big ticket seller. Probably the fight. Like, I'm looking forward to the main event, but I'm low key, sort of almost, maybe even more so. I'm looking forward to Babbage Robinson. I liked the press conference. The press conference was very good. I liked the back and forths. Alan Babbage. I know he's limited. I know he's not going to go particularly far. He said he's coming in heavier now for this fight than he had in the past. He'd come in below cruiserweight for heavyweight fights in the past. So I don't know how much good that weight's going to do. We'll have to wait and see on fight night. But I will enjoy that fight for what it is. But we obviously got to talk about the main event, which is Fabio Wardley versus Frazer Clarke. This fight was, I think, called for last year, and obviously Ben Shalom didn't go ahead with the purse bid. Fabio Wardley ended up fighting David Adelaide. I hold my hands up. I picked David Adelaide to win. It was a fairly run-of-the-mill, easy enough win for Fabio Wardley. I expected more from David Adelaide, I have to admit. I thought that he would be more aggressive. Fabio Wardley, however, was exceptional in that fight. He really was. And he really shut David Adelaide. He shut his whole offense pretty much down. And I think he made David Adelaide may have had a game plan to apply a bit of pressure. And he wasn't the most experienced amateur, but he was more experienced than Fabio Wardley, who was just a white-collar background. Now, Frazer Clarke is the way more experienced out of the two in terms of amateur pedigree. This guy's been to the Olympics. I know he's only 8-0 as a professional, but as an amateur, he done well for himself. He really did. I think he was a bronze medal in Tokyo. His last 3 fights have been Bogdan Dinu, Marius Vac, and Dave Allen. Not anything to necessarily write home about, but it's still, you know, I mean, Bogdan Dinu, I mean, yeah, no great shakes there. Marius Vac, durable, and Dave Allen. That performance against Dave Allen was less than stellar, it has to be said. Considering Dave Allen has been beaten decisively years ago by people like a Tony Yoka, who, again, he hasn't had a particularly, and I know some people will say, well, gee, and I will, you know, you're right to point that out, that Yoka did. I don't think he necessarily failed any tests, but he missed testing, which, you know, you may as well, why would you miss them, you know? And that punching power, I mean, Dave Allen even remarked that I think Dave Allen even said that Tony Yoka was the hardest puncher. Maybe he's retracted that, but I remember him in interviews saying that a couple of years ago. Dave Allen's been in there with Ortiz, Dylan White, amongst others. To say Tony Yoka is the hardest puncher, and then for him not to be even able to tickle Carlos Takam with his shots, yeah, I'll give you that one. But nevertheless, he has been in there with guys like Luis Ortiz, etc., who have handled him a lot more emphatically than Frazer Clarke. And Frazer Clarke, when you listen to him speak, and I don't want to be disrespectful, but he comes across as someone who himself almost knows my ceiling is not particularly high. So for him, this fight may be as close as he's going to get to his kind of world title fight, if you know what I mean. This the big stage, main eventing for a British title. It is, the British and Commonwealth title. So this may be his world title fight, you know. Fabio Wardley is someone who, when I saw him early on in his career, I wasn't massively impressed. And he did definitely impress me against Adelaide. But I'm still a little bit kind of, what do we really have here with Fabio Wardley? There is athleticism, there is speed. His jab is very good. He's definitely got punching power. He's one of those fighters that whenever he gets stunned or whenever he gets buzzed or his back's against the wall, he comes out swinging, which I like. Now, he's done that against fighters like Nick Webb, Nathan Gorman. I don't want to necessarily say they've had him in trouble, but they've definitely, had success in fights with him. And, that's when Fabio Wardley has seen the red mist. He's come out swinging, and he ended those fights pretty conclusively, against Nick Webb and also against Nathan Gorman. What you have to do, and you can even argue as well against someone like an Eric Molina, what you have to look and see what was going on in those fights, especially the Nathan Gorman fight. Nathan Gorman and Nick Webb, both more experienced as amateurs than Fabio Wardley. They both got beaten. Against Nathan Gorman, early on in that fight, Gorman was able to use his jab and had a really good effect actually with his jab. He had a really lot of success in there against Fabio Wardley. And Wardley seemed to just struggle to really get past that. Once he just kind of threw caution to the wind and went for it, Nathan Gorman, obviously, he's gone on to lose since then and come in terrible shape as he always does, but even worse shape. He was able to get through that pretty easy. I wonder, will he be able to impose his will? Because bear in mind, Frazer Clarke is a big unit, he's a big lump in there. Will he be able to do that against Frazer Clarke? Frazer Clarke, again, is experienced. We see his technique come out. He can labour a bit in fights, I feel, Frazer Clarke, and I think we've seen that, again, even against someone like a Dave Allen, who didn't come in good shape, has miles and miles on the clock. I felt that he could have really made that fight easier than he did. Really could have made it easier than he did, and he can have that type of performance in there against Fabio Wardley. One thing I will say about Wardley, and people have remarked on this before, and they're right too, when he sees that red mist and he comes out swinging, there will come a time where a fighter will be able to use that against them. And there is often that saying, when a fighter is hurt, that's when not only the person who's hurt them is basically the fighter. What was it Customato used to say, that if a fighter gets buzzed, that's when the fighter who's been buzzed, that is most dangerous. Because the fighter who's hurt them tends to throw caution to the wind, leave himself opened. And Fabio Wardley kind of fits that bill. When Fabio Wardley starts going and throwing his hands and letting all those shots go, that's when he's opened. And I'm wondering if Frazer Clarke is going to be the guy to be able to go and counter and use that aggression against them, possibly. Now, Frazer Clarke hasn't shown any signs that he's a devastating puncher or anything like that. But Frazer Clarke is still, as I said, he's a big lump of a man. He's 6'2". His weight kind of normal, like 270 against Mariusz Wach. He was 270 again against Dave Allen. I don't really care how good your chin is. If you are a 6'6", 270-pound man and you land with a decent amount of power on someone, you are going to hurt them. You're going to hurt them. And Fabio Wardley, he's not been down, but do I think his chin is iron? I don't think he's chinny, but I definitely think that he can be hurt in fights. And I think we may see it. I expect Fabio Wardley, in a way, right? I expected more from Adelaide, and that fight turned out to be a pretty easy win for Fabio Wardley. I actually think this fight will be more difficult for Fabio Wardley than the Adelaide fight. I think this is going to be a more competitive fight, and it may actually go rounds. It may go a lot longer than Fabio Wardley has gone in the past. The David Adelaide fight went 7 rounds, which I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, it was the most he'd ever gone in a fight. Prior to that, the most he'd ever gone was 6 rounds. I could actually see this being a long affair. I could see this going into the late rounds, round 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, potentially could even go the distance. So I see this being a long, drawn-out affair, but I ultimately see Fabio Wardley winning. I think he's going to stop Frazer Clarke, quite frankly. I think he's going to be late. It's going to be an accumulative effect. I love the jab when he uses it from Fabio Wardley. It's a really crisp, fast, accurate jab. If he can get that jab working, and it turns out to be the better of the two, he's going to have a lot of success in there. I think that Frazer Clarke he's not the fastest heavyweight in the world. Wardley can actually throw some good body punches. I think that's what he's going to do. And I think that maybe Frazer Clarke may actually be put in his place a little bit by the punching power of Fabio Wardley. Because again, I think Adelaide really went into that fight thinking, I'm going to either try and outbox this guy, or if I can't, I'm going to just take it to him, rough house. And once he started feeling what Fabio Wardley had to give, he was in his box seat a lot. Having said that, he was able to have moments of success where he was able to land shots in there. But for the most part in that fight, it was all Fabio Wardley. Again, I expect this to be more competitive, but ultimately I think it's going to be the same outcome. I think Fabio Wardley is going to beat Frazer Clarke. I think he's going to stop him. I think Frazer Clarke is going to be game. I think he's going to win rounds in there. But ultimately, do I think he has enough in the tank? No, I don't. I really don't. And I genuinely think he knows that himself. You know, when I look through his career, and I've seen most of these fights, I haven't really been impressed with what I've seen from Frazer Clarke. I think it's been fairly run-of-the-mill. Some of the fights, like against Dave Allen again, he probably could have made those fights easier than he did, because Dave Allen was there for the taking, and it was really Dave Allen quitting on a stool after, 6 rounds. You know, I think that, you know, if Frazer Clarke had stepped on the gas, he could have got him out of there a lot earlier. I really do. I think he was there for the taking. And I think that if Frazer Clarke is lax in this fight, then it could be a very short night. If he is switched on, I don't expect him to win, but I think it will go long, and I think ultimately he might go the distance, might very well. But I'm going Fabio Wardley, late stoppage, roundabout rounds, probably, I'm going to go rounds 10 to 12. Might even be a last round stoppage, but I'm going to go late. Fabio Wardley stoppage in a reasonably competitive fight. Like, put it like this. No one's going to be saying it was neck and neck whenever the stoppage comes. It's going to be a real case of, well, Clarke had moments of success, but it was ultimately Fabio Wardley who was in control the whole way through. That's how I'm seeing it. In terms of the card itself, I like the card. I think it's a very good card, very intriguing card. As boxer shows have gone, this is one of the better ones. On paper, doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be good on fight night, but I think this one has all the makings of a good card. So that's my thoughts there. Let me know yours in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed the video, people. Smash the like button if you could. Subscribe, of course, if you haven't already. I think we're only about 13 subs off 17,100. So hit the old subscribe button. Try and get, we want to get 18, then 19, then 20. 20k specials are coming. So we'll do that. Hope you enjoyed it, people. Peace.